Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 121 of the RRBG podcast. Don't forget to check out the Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/RRBG and follow today. Support the podcast. You can get some exclusive content like the interviews from Psycho Las Vegas and some of the video content I'm going to be doing. You can also get yourself meet and greet packages for the live shows we're doing and a whole bunch of other stuff. Go to patreon.com/RRBG and support the podcast today. In this episode, I talked to Doc Coyle of the band Bad Wolves. After helping us out with the live podcast for the Josh Barnett Bloodsport watch party, I went to Doc's house and we sat down for a couple hours to talk. We talked about their new album coming out October 25th, Nation. We talked about the band's writing process and their explosive growth and future tour plans. We talked about politics. We talked about basketball. We talked about race. It was an incredible conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please don't forget to follow them on social media. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Cheers. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RRBG podcast. I'm here at the Casa de Coyle. Casa Doc?
Yes, sir.
Casa Doc with
Welcome.
Doc Coyle of Bad Wolves. What's up, man?
Not much, man. Just getting shit together. I just did some DDP yoga before you got here.
Okay.
Getting
DDPY, bro. It's not yoga. Get it right. He doesn't like that.
Oh, he doesn't. DDPY. What does the Y stand for?
Don't worry about it.
Okay, I won't. I'll do my best.
Yeah, I've been listening to him talk, and it's like he gets mad when people call it yoga. He's like, it's not yoga. Like, but it is. All right, and that's how you started it, promoting it. I don't know, whatever.
I don't care. I'll call whatever you want. It's my third day doing it. And
Nice.
I like
You doing the app or the tapes?
the app, but someone, actually a fan, hit me up on Twitter, and he's like, "Oh, I was like, you want to do a trade?" He's like, "I'll send you the DVDs." And I just sent him like a T-shirt, or Bad Wolves T-shirt, and he sent me this. So I have the DVDs too.
Hell yeah.
Which is probably better in like a bigger room because you could just put it on.
Yeah.
Because the app, you're kind of like, you got your phone, and some stuff you have to be on the floor, and so you're kind of moving your phone around, and it's a little annoying. But it,
Do they let you do like because I know some apps, like the Fight TV app, lets you cast to your TV.
Yeah, I guess it probably depends what kind of TV you have.
That's true. Too, yeah.
I have the Apple TV, so I was doing it with this TV. But I don't know. I might do it in the living room. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
But yeah, I tried it for a bit. I still want to go back and do it because I got a bunch of injuries that I got to, stretch out. But it works, man.
Yeah, I have really bad back problems, so gets progressively worse over the course of any tour I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, what, and literally like I did a post about it, and I'm probably haven't gotten that much response. People just like swearing by it.
Yeah.
Being like, yo, this is the shit. So, you get that much, you're like, okay, there must be something here. Especially guys like Jericho, who, he has back problems, and Diamond Dallas Page, he had back problems. So I'm like, okay, these guys understand my issues. So, you have to do what you can in your power. So it's like, instead of just being passive,
No, yeah, I hear you. My issue is always with every workout thing I do it until I start feeling better, and then I stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I did DDPY for a bit I had this, car accident. So I was like stretching out all the collarbone things. And once I started feeling better, I just stopped doing it. I'm like,
my issues are chronic, so I probably can't stop doing it.
Yeah. And once you start feeling good, you kind of get addicted to that feeling of being in good health.
Oh, yeah.
And the touring act, like you said, it's rough because you got, depending on whatever transportation situation, even buses aren't comfortable. The what do they call the bunks? They're not super big.
It's. I mean, listen, it is what it is. Sometimes you'll go and get some like extra padding and maybe some extra pillows. But trust me, I'll take the a bus over a van any day.
Oh yeah,
of the week,
it's obviously progressively worse if you go in a van, but And then also, just rocking out on stage every night, like going, back and forth.
That's the main thing. Yeah. I think just doing things with your body in an uncomfortable way and exerting yourself, and also because you're doing things that are repetitive and they're not ambidextrous. You're doing certain motions in one direction, so it puts your body kind of out of equilibrium.
Sure, yeah, and if you're putting all the pressure on your right leg to kind of like push forward for like a headbang or something, you're doing that every night. Everything, your right leg starts getting cramps, or the vice versa. Sometimes your left leg starts hurting more, or whatever. It's interesting, man. But you guys are, I know you're about to drop a new album.
Yeah.
Right. October 25th. Yeah. Nation.
Yes.
This is the letters are all, they got periods. So is it an acronym for something?
Well, here's the thing. I've gotten like kind of shit about, song titles and album artwork and the album name. I literally had nothing to do with any of that. Like I found out half of that stuff when the public found out.
Okay.
What the name of the album was, what the album artwork was. No one sent me that shit. So I wasn't really, in the decision making apparatus with things like that. But the play on it is that like our website's called badwolvesnation.com, and that's like a hashtag we put out there. So it's really not that it's called Nation, it's that it's Bad Wolves Nation. That's the vibe.
Gotcha.
From what I hear, and I don't know if the acronym actually means anything. I'm sure it does, or else why would they do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like talking about it like I'm not even in the band. I'm like, yeah, I wonder why they did that.
Is the writing process kind of the same? Like, is there like a general thing that you receive and then you put your touches on it, or is it something that you guys get in a room and work together?
I mean, John is really kind of starts a lot of the stuff off, and then I would write stuff on my own, and then me and Chris worked on some stuff, and then me and John got together, worked on some stuff, but a bulk of the material is really coming from John, and he works with this guitar player, Max Karen, who used to be in the band.
Okay.
And so he'll go up to his studio, and they'll kind of, it's the ideas are coming from John, but it's kind of filtered through Max, who's a really great guitar player, and he's really great at production. So we do all our rhythm tracking and stuff at his spot in Vegas, and then so they kind of came up with a bulk of songs, and then I came in, and Chris and I came in and then laid down some of the other stuff that we were working on, and then I kind of gave my notes on the material they were working on. So I kind of, it's probably about 3 or 4 tracks that are either my material or partially my material, and then a handful of other songs that were John's songs that, maybe like, oh, I gave a note on a pre-chorus, or hey, let's try it, kind of little things like that. And then, and then we go, and once we have instrumentals, then we work on the lyrics and vocals with some other producers, and it's kind of, it's a little, our process, I think is a little unorthodox, but it definitely works for what we're trying to get done.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, whatever is comfortable for you guys, I think is what's most important, because some bands can't really function well just like mailing stuff back and forth. Like they have to be in a room, or vice versa. Some bands just work better away from each other because they somehow make good music but can't stand being around each other.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the technology and the ways in which you work on stuff, a lot of it's about workflow and efficiency. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm still old school. Like I still like the idea of, even if you kind of mess around with stuff on a computer, then get in a room, see how it feels, see how the part, because for me it's all about transitions and like how does a part work, because sometimes something seems right on a computer and through the speakers, but when you actually play it, it seems off, or it seems like it doesn't really work. So, but unfortunately to do that, it just takes longer. So you have to kind of decide, do you want to take, years and years to make a record, or does it make more sense to try and condense it? And the truth is, we were really under a certain deadline to get the record out this year. The goal was to get a record out in 2019 because we had so much momentum from Disobey.
Yeah.
And it was, hey, let's keep this going. We had a little bit of a break at the beginning of the year, but more or less the activity kind of really hasn't stopped, whether it's writing, recording, touring, what
Yeah,
have you.
doing press stuff too. I mean, you guys are your name is everywhere. I mean, it's kind of incredible to see. Like, you guys are fresh band pretty much. I mean, you're all veterans, but the band itself is, only been around for one album, and this is your second album. And it's just incredible to see. Like, you guys are on tour now you're going to go on tour with Megadeth and Five Finger Death Punch. Like, that doesn't just happen. You know what I mean?
Well, it is happening.
Yeah.
This is not a dream. This is not a drill.
So, I mean, it feels like who took notice? Like, how did, because, bands try to do this all the time and they're just stuck in their homes or their garages. Like, how did you guys get that immediate, like, boom?
Well, I mean, it's one, I do think that musically there was something special there. We pretty much, John was working on this music with Max, and Chris was still playing with the guys, our other guitar player, but he wasn't quite as involved with the writing process when it started. So it was really like Max and John, and they didn't really have a band. And John was like trying different vocalists, and like I remember hearing demos with 3 or 4 different singers.
Okay.
And I had just had Mike Terry on my podcast, and he was actually singing for it, and the band was called N.A.T.I.O.N at the time. And the stuff sounded really good. And he had that because he has a little more soul and kind of thick. It had a really cool vibe to the way it sounded. But ultimately, Mike joined Volumes, and so he really didn't have time to do this. And somehow within that period, John ended up having Tommy, because the song "Learn to Live" wasn't even going to be an N.A.T.I.O.N song. It was like, he almost thought it was a little too like straightforward, like it was too simplistic.
Okay.
And it was going to be like he was going to give it to Westfield Massacre, but when he heard it, it was so good, he was like, "Nah, fuck this, I'm keeping it." And then that kind of inspired him, like, oh, maybe try to sing on some of these other songs. And that's kind of when, because I'm so close with John, I've been hearing all the material as it developed, and that's when it seemed to like really click. When Tommy came in, the songs got a bit more condensed, and they were very like progressive and kind of out there and 6 minutes long, and so everything got condensed, and I was like, oh, I think these guys are really onto something. That's kind of around the time John asked me to join, and so they were finishing the record, and we were taught, we weren't really shopping it yet, but John is close with Monty Connor, because he was their A&R guy at Roadrunner. So he was a Nuclear Blast, and he sent him the record, and Monty liked it, but ultimately kind of passed it around, and it was a thumbs down. So it was like right when the record was done, but before we had like shopped it around and kind of done stuff. And also it was there was a version of the record, but a lot of songs actually that ended up on the first record came later. But anyway, so that happened, and we kind of suspected that we would sign to like a metal label, go out, be in a van, kind of like, maybe open up for, and All That Remains, or, something like that. And just, that, we get a couple tours and just kind of grind it out and just see what happens. That's kind of what we thought was going to happen. We'd just be, being that we were known members from bands that, maybe we could get on a label or get a few tours or something like that. But we didn't expect anything too crazy. And essentially we did the music video for Learn to Live, and put that out, and it kind of like all of a sudden like every label wanted to sign us, and it got like a ton of views like right away, and it kind of just created this groundswell. And right around that time, Tommy was asked to basically be like a sober companion, like for Ivan from Five Finger Death Punch, and then shit went down where Ivan, relapsed, and then Tommy ended up singing for them, and so through that, his relations, getting close with Zoltan was looking to get into management, and and they kind of wanted to help him out since he was helping them out, and so Zoltan wanted to manage the band. They brought us in with 11-7 Records, and under 10th Street management, kind of between him kind of being like the executive kind of manager, and then 10th Street doing the day-to-day and being involved with strategy. And then between signing the record deal and when it came out, we had more time to work on songs. So a lot of and because it was a more mainstream label and they had radio, it kind of changed the context of the record. So we added more songs that were a little more commercial. Even though there was stuff that we were already working on, it wasn't like it just, hey, we need to do this. We had already had Zombie, we already had Hear Me Now, but we didn't know if it was going to make the record, because if it would have came out on Nuclear Blast, maybe it would have made sense to go more metal.
Right.
Because they might not be able to get those opportunities.
Sure.
So that allowed us to develop. There were even songs like Officer Down wasn't a part of the original recording. No Masters, that was written after. So it was like a different record. Okay. And so by the time it actually ended up becoming Disobey, maybe only about 6 or 7 songs from the original album, and a lot of other songs became like B-side tracks.
Okay.
So anyway, so and then when you get that machine behind you, and then Five Finger just took us out on like 2 or 3 tours, and then the amount of power really the label management has to get us on these other tours, just that, and then Zombie happened.
Yeah, dude, that was crazy, because just and it's an unfortunate kind of tragedy what happened with her, and I know you guys were talking about having her on the song too.
Well, I had heard she was going to be on the song. Mm-hmm. But it's like you hear a lot of things. You're like, oh, but it wasn't like I said, I'm kind of on the outside looking in when it comes to a lot of the inner workings of what goes on. And then, I found out that she was getting ready to record it when she died, like when everyone else found out. So I didn't, and then obviously that kind of.
Well, the whole tragedy made it blow up, because everybody was checking out the song, because it was like as a tribute, Yeah,
the video was a tribute, and we were kind of brought into her story.
Yeah.
And I think the song was just, the cover was really effective, the video was really strong, and sometimes certain things just work in a particular moment, and that, kind of like knocked down a bunch of doors, like where we thought with radio, for example, that we would, all right, we'll put out a single, but maybe it'll get top 20 or top 30, and then if we're lucky, and then each single, we have to kind of go and kiss all the butts at the radio stations to break out. But because of this song, like it's funny thing is it hit, in all the other digital realms first. It was big on YouTube and Spotify and.
Well, that's the future we live in now.
Well, right? No, but it's immediate, and it actually took radio a while to actually catch up, because for radio they're like, well, why are we going to play this brand new band that no one's ever heard of? Right. That's the way they think, like, which kind of makes sense, but they almost had to play it, because Jackie at our management who does the radio stuff, she was saying like they didn't like, radio was like sick of covers.
Right.
They didn't want covers, but they just had to play it because the demand was so.
The demand, the whole situation, the tragedy it's crazy. It's funny to me to hear that radio people still think like that. Only like, I'm not listening to the radio. Who's listening to the radio? Isn't everybody on Spotify and YouTube now?
Well, but we also don't have a real hard rock station around here. I mean, you have K-Rock, which is a little more indie. And that was the same way when I lived in New Jersey. We had a K-Rock there, and it was hard rock. It was Linkin Park and Green Day and all that stuff, and they changed their formats, and that happened to a lot of major cities. But
Miami has none.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. So it's different, But so it really was relegated to a lot of the middle of the country, smaller towns, smaller cities, college towns, and that's where kind of terrestrial radio is strong, and the band is we've flourished there. We've had, all 3 of our singles went number 1 in active rock radio. So,
well, I mean, shit, if it's working, I honestly, like, I guess I do live in a bubble, and I have lived my whole life kind of on those cities we mentioned. I mean, I was born in Jersey, lived there till I was 15, and moved to Miami. Miami had a rock station for a little bit. We had what was it called? It wasn't K-Rock. Zeta. It was called Zeta. And they would have these big open field festivals like Rob Zombie and Godsmack and Stained and all of that, Korn. And those things would do great. They would have like the Halloweeny roast on Halloween time, and everybody would perform in costumes, and it was amazing. And then just one day, just like, oh, Zeta's gone, and now it's a reggaeton station and no more shows. And it's already hard enough to get bands to drive to Miami.
Well, they had Fort Rock down there, which was Fort Lauderdale, and that was really we were down there. It was great.
Yeah, Fort Lauderdale's okay. They have a good scene. They had the venue Revolution, and which used to be the Chili Pepper Culture Room. But Miami itself had nothing. Like Miami,
it's not far. You mad? You got to drive 45 minutes to go to a show.
Yeah, in Miami, that's kind of a with the shitty drivers. People don't like going anywhere. I mean, I would always be up there in Fort Lauderdale for shows. That was my scene. I'd hang out with the Non-Point dudes when there was still a local band, and Darwin's Waiting Room, and your name, your old band, God Forbid, would be around sometimes. I mean,
we play there all the time.
Yeah, so that to me was Fort Lauderdale was the scene. But growing up, my band was playing in way South Miami, like down by the Keys. So to go to Fort Lauderdale was an hour for us. It was kind of like, that's not our scene anymore. We're going an hour out of town to play a show or to see a show. So it was rough to not have a radio station or anything. That's why the band kind of fizzled out. We were just like, how are we going to do this? There's no audience out here. It's all dance music, hip hop music. We would do tours, but just hoping that someone sees and catches the performance and takes us out of there. But that's why I left, man. I moved over here to LA because I was tired of missing shows. I couldn't go to any concerts. None of my favorite bands would drive down to Miami.
Yeah.
Orlando was one that most people hit, but I don't know. Mentioning God Forbid, is that something that you've ever thought of like doing again at some point?
I mean, the kind of idea is always back in the back of the head, but I think just I got so busy with everything.
Yeah.
And I've said this a million times. It's like no one's calling us
right
to do anything. There's no like, obviously, fans will make a post or tag you in something, but the truth is it's hard to tell how much, it would of an impact it would have. And the truth is it's like, John, he started a family, Byron started a family, he moved out to Texas. Corey's pretty busy, and and I don't even know what we would do for a second guitar player. No one's really in touch with my brother, and so I don't know. It's just something that I think if the time is right, it will kind of present itself.
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm not against it, but I just don't live in the past. It's funny because my podcast is talking a lot about the past and kind of like and maybe the best way to look like it's when we're talking about this history of like what happened in this scene and what happened with these bands and these individuals. So I do talk about that stuff, but it's really all about right now. Like I don't pine for the old days. I'm not really nostalgic in that sense of things. Right. I don't think.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, dude. I mean, the band Bad Wolves is doing great, as you've mentioned. With the upcoming tours, the platinum single, the new album. It's gonna hit hard. So there's no need right now. It's one of those things. I also kind of have a problem with bands when they get back together after a long period of time that it just never really feels the same anymore. Because especially if they broke up when they were younger. Like look at Refused. I love Refused. To me, The Shape of Punk to Come is one of the best albums ever made. And then when they came back 15 years later, it was like, all right, like they're back. I want to hear the songs from that album. The new songs, I'm kind of like, well, they took it in a.
I really like the new album.
It's good. It's just a different direction. Like they got,
That's great.
What do you call it? The dude worked on like Britney Spears songs, right? I believe.
Shellback or who is it? I forget the producer, but yeah, it was a really good producer. Like a little more known. Listen, I thought it was really cool, and I mean, you look at when they came back, man, people were pumped up, and I think you look at, Alice in Chains took a really long break, came back with a new singer, and one of their best albums, Black Is Way to Blue. I think the new Carcass record was incredible. I think the new At the Gates after they reformed, I thought was great.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it can be done. It's out there. You just have to do it right. And and that's something I'd probably be more interested in if like we did a record or something with, because you want to feel like you have something to give currently, even if it's hard to say, because a lot of bands, look at like, Death Angel, they were broken up for a really long time and got back together and probably were much bigger in their second half of their career than the first time around.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of different paths. It's just about what do you want to do? What are you feeling? And if the band has enough of an audience and they have something to contribute artistically, the people ultimately going to decide whether they show up to the shows or buy the records or support them,
Yeah, and I think it would make sense too to kind of take advantage of the fact that that Bad Wolves is taken off, and if it happens and you return to God forbid, it would have a lot more behind it too. Like you'll take some of that crowd with you to that maybe hadn't heard God forbid before, maybe. Like a new audience. You know what I mean?
Maybe, who knows? But like I said, I haven't really thought about it that much because I have, obviously I do things in multimedia with the podcast and writing, and I get. I do a lot of other musical projects and I have little ideas in my head, and I think the last thing I want to do is just something that feels like I'm retreading ground. Like even if I wrote new God forbid songs, I wouldn't want to rehash God. I would want it to feel fresh,
right.
And I think that's what you're always trying to do. I mean, at least I am, I don't know. It's something I haven't really thought about a whole lot, to be truthful.
Good. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not here to bring up dirty waters or whatever.
It's not dirty.
It's just an idea. Like I know I had, I announced that I was going to talk to you, and I had some people bring it up, so I was like, I'll bring it up. It's it's interesting to me the bands that don't really succeed. Like you mentioned some that did succeed, but there's a lot of bands that come back, and I'm just like, I wish you would have not come back. Now, like you're soiling your legacy with whatever it is.
Sometimes it happens. I think usually when that happens is, to me, not when a band makes a comeback. It's when all the members keep leaving, and by the end of it, it's either one original person or zero original members, and they're just kind of holding on just to do it. I think that usually happens to me than when people do comebacks, because 9 out of 10 times if people do a reunion show or reunion tour, they don't even have a new record. They're just getting back to do a few shows.
Yeah.
And listen, I think seeing a band or an artist at a particular time is just, you just have to just cross your fingers and be happy that you got to see them at a certain, because it's never the same. You're seeing a band at a certain period when they're at their peak. You're never going to be able to have that. So you just appreciate it when it happens, because you never know. Band members could leave or people pass away, or you just never know.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's weird. We do live in a society of kind of nostalgia is being sold back at us a lot lately.
Well, especially in the rock and metal world, because that's what the fans want. They're very much tied to the past.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not willing to open doors. Like there's this new band that I'm listening to called Sleep Token. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I've heard the name. I haven't heard the band.
And they're anonymous. Like nobody knows who the band members are. I have some ideas because I know some people's, but the sound it's rock, it's heavy, but there's also the singer's very radio friendly, like R&B pop type of vocals. You know what I mean? And I find it fascinating that they're kind of blending these new elements together, but people aren't open to that. They want traditional, like that weird, like metal rock elitism that happens a lot. Like when you look at bands like Opeth, like they're doing beautiful progressive things, but fans are bitching because they're not growling and doing death metal like they used to.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, you set yourself up by your foundation. So if you start one way, the truth is, Opeth took a pretty hard turn.
Yeah. And
they, if you built your audience off one thing and then you change it dramatically, I mean, I can't even really hold it against the fans that say, well, it's like if you go to, McDonald's for 20 years, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I love McDonald's chicken nuggets. And they're like, yeah, we don't sell chicken nuggets anymore. Why would you go back to McDonald's?
That's true. That's
so,
true.
I mean, that's the band has to live with that for their, you make an artistic choice that's dramatic. Then understand that. Listen, and Opeth's doing just fine.
Yeah.
They have, because they're so good at really whatever they do. And, and I've loved, obviously, but my favorite kind of era from the band is basically from like, Still Life all the way up through like Watershed. Just that I feel like they never had a misstep. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't a big fan of the Heritage record, but then I feel like they rebounded really well in the last couple records.
I really like Sorceress. That one really.
Yeah, man. I think they're Michael's like a genius, and every player in that band is like an A++ player, and there's only one Opeth, So, and you go see them live, they still play the other songs. It's not like they stopped playing them, even though I think on some tours they might have not played the heavier stuff. But that is what it is, and you have to be willing as an artist to understand that if you change dramatically, it's going to have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, some bands try it like Korn, and they do the dubstep thing, and that.
I like that record.
Yeah, but they gained a lot of fans, but they also lost a few fans on that because it's just such a drastic change.
But I mean, I'll be honest, man. I'd rather them do that than like on Korn 3, where it seemed like they were kind of like, we're gonna go back to the old. It's like I don't even like the new Korn record just came out. The Nothing is probably my favorite record since like. Issues or like, Untouchables or whatever, because it feels like they're moving forward. They're not like, hey, let's rehab. No. They're just like, we're Korn, we do what we do, but it's going to be a modern version of that. And it's like, that's what I want bands to do is know who they are, but keep moving forward and not say, hey, let's just try and relive this thing. Because you know what? You can never be that person.
Yeah.
You can only be who you are now. You're never going to be 16 again. You're never going to be 25 again. And you have to be the human being you are now, and that authenticity will kind of show itself. And you look at a band like Metallica, for example, who really has kind of gone back to their roots on the last couple records, but they still also haven't forgotten, what they've developed into. There's still stuff in there that could be on a Load record. There's still stuff on there that could be, on a Saint Anger or something like. It's not like it's that stuff didn't seep in. It's like, or we're just gonna do a retro record. No, they kind of like realize who they are and what works for them, but still have it feel relevant.
Yeah. It's hard to do. And it really shows who the real stars are, like the people that are high level talents, if they can pull that off. Because like I was saying, we do live in a society where nostalgia is the thing. We're getting HD remakes of video games from our childhood. We're getting HD remakes of Disney movies that, I find unnecessary, but it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just, it's weird because I do appreciate a little nostalgia here and there. I mean, you're wearing a shirt from The Thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think my nostalgia certainly lies within, the world of film. Mm-hmm. And kind of pop culture, I get a kick out of that stuff, but it's just stuff that I like, and I think there is an element of, certain things were just great. They were made a long time ago, and there's a reason why they're a classic, and you can't really do that better than they did that. There's never going to be a better version of the Beatles to me. There's never going to be
right.
There's certain pieces of work that. To this day, time goes by, but we still go back to it because it still shines above and beyond. You can't, you put on a Indiana Jones and it's like, it's just like a thing that just shines through. Right. That because we don't shoot on 35 millimeter film anymore. We don't, the grain doesn't look the same. The way, just the way the work was created, the
practical effects,
the methodology has changed. So it just you just can't recreate that. Doesn't mean there's, like, for example, I'm a big Marvel guy, and, I think we're going to look back on some of, Endgame and Infinity War in 20 years and 30 years from now, and people are going to be nostalgic for that because it's going to be a thing that we did really great in this time.
Yeah.
So some of it is nostalgia, and some of it just like, hey, they just did it. That just worked really, really well, Some things just don't change. I mean, if you buy a hammer, has the design of a hammer changed in how many thousands of years? No, they just did it well, and we still use hammers,
Yeah. Yeah, they'll come out with like fancy looking hammers with like, oh, this is for screws too, and it's like, yeah, it's still a hammer.
But it's not because we're nostalgic for fucking caveman tools or some shit, you know?
It just works properly.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. And I feel that way about a lot of bands too. Like when I listened to it, and the reason it was so impactful for me at that time is because of the way I was living my life at that time. Like Poison the Well was a big one for me growing up because I was living in Hialeah and they're from there, and just being in that scene and that angsty, like angry, everything sucks in Hialeah, so everybody was mad. That time period was perfect. If I were to try and recreate that, I'm like in my late 30s. I'm not that angry anymore. Life isn't that aggressive, and I don't have those emotions anymore. I'll still enjoy the record, but I don't want to. Like, it's hard to come out with a new record that will push the boundaries, but also treat the people to that nostalgic feeling of memories from their childhood. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your podcast. I mean, your podcast is pretty successful, the X-Men. And what do you feel in terms of the community, the podcast community? Like, do you feel that they're supportive? Is it kind of like the music scene? Or do you feel like you're kind of always in like a competition mentality?
I think it's a little bit of both. There's certain elements of it where, like for example, someone like Jamie Josta, like I can't compete with him because he's so much more well-known individually. He started it way earlier. And his contacts and connections, he can just get a certain kind of interview that not that I can't get, it's just a little bit harder, so because of that, and my show has a theme. Right. And his show doesn't really have a theme. He's just talking to whoever. But to me, like when I look at competition, it's more that I've noticed a few other podcasts that kind of are borrowing my theme without saying it explicitly.
Right.
And I've seen that, and it's smaller shows. It's not that it's but in a sense for me, I'll get a little annoyed, like, man, they kind of got that person, they got that conversation, and I know I could do it better because I have the relationship with that person, or I kind of understand it from an insider's perspective. Right. So I get a little annoyed sometimes that, but I'm starting to learn. It's like, listen, man, you can't really worry about that because it's going to be really hard to get. It's like being in a media outlet. Like, you want the exclusive. Right. Yeah. And you just have to kind of just let that go. So I've really focused my efforts on who are the people no one's talking to, what are the conversations, because you have to carve out something that's unique to yourself.
Yeah.
And part of that is just from my experience. Like, okay, I've had this particular trajectory. I've been a part of these scenes, and I can speak to someone from a certain era in a way that someone who doesn't have a relationship with that person or that scene it's not going to be the same. So that's really a main thing. And then also, stepping out to my particular interest, which is, really kind of going down these intellectual rabbit holes, be it talking about politics or race or, philosophy, and kind of, so I'll kind of have, and then I'm trying to trickle that in with kind of more topical stuff. Like I have an episode coming out about the new Tool record with the music critic.
Okay.
Stuff that's just kind of quick hit. Let's talk about this. And so that's what I'm trying to make the content feel unique to what I do, and also feel like there's a sense of intimacy to it. So, and like I said, try and talk to as many people and because the truth is, if someone is on, has been on Josh's show 5 times, is it that relevant for me to get them on the show? I don't know. Yeah. Even though I know I'm going to do something different, it's also about, not, trying to zig when other people are zagging.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I tried to do that a lot with this podcast. I throw some curveballs in there every once in a while. Like, hey, I happened to meet the guy who created all the sounds on the Avengers films at a party. And my podcast started off where it was just beer and music. And then I'm like, but I'm not going to pass up this opportunity. Like, why wouldn't I talk to the dude who makes the sounds at Star Wars? And and Avengers and Lucasfilms and throw him on there and just that kind of stuff. And artists, I try and reach out to artists that I admire that are not kind of in the limelight. Like one of my first guests was Chris Penny. So I was fascinated by that whole thing with Dillinger and when he left the band and there was kind of like an issue, and I was like, no one's really had Penny's perspective on the whole thing. The band just kept going, and it's like, let's go talk to Penny. So I totally hear you about just trying to think outside. It's the bane of being in a podcast. It's like trying to figure out how do we do stuff to draw an audience, because sometimes I'll think something is going to be huge, like, oh, I got this guest, it's going to be fucking great, and then it doesn't get the traction, I guess, that you'd expect out of it. Like a comedian, you'll get a comedian on, and maybe all your fans are just music fans and they don't really care about comedy. So yeah, I don't know. And you have the theme, the X-Men, but like you said, you're doing a Tool episode. You're kind of branching out a little bit in terms of theme too. I mean, have you thought of you're just going to keep it as X-Men, or have you thought about?
Eventually, I'd like to rebrand or start something different. But like I said, I have all these different people. But I don't know if people can hear this. This is like fucking gardening day out here. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, that's good. I think we're good.
But because like I said, I do feel like it's a certain story I'm trying to tell and have these particular conversations, and I don't want it to be that forever. I really don't. But I've kind of, I'm the kind of guy I like to finish what I start, and I'll work through my list, and as long as that goes and I can wrap it up, we'll see. But I just, I don't want to do one thing forever, and I don't want it to be too. But I feel like almost like people reach out to me, they're like, man, thank you for what you do. I get so much out of this. It's really inspirational, or it's so I feel like almost a responsibility to kind of keep this going, talk to the people that I want to talk to, and then really open it up and and see like, hey, maybe I should do something different, or maybe do a podcast with someone else. Have a
guest, like not a guest, a co-host.
Yeah, like a co-host or just the truth is I have a lot more interest outside of just this. Yeah, and I could do an NBA podcast full time. I could do a movie podcast full like that. I could do a politics full time if I wanted to. I could do just comedy, just being funny and fucking cracking. I could do that full time. So it's kind of really I'm honing my skills in this format, and then seeing what I can take that and do other things with. But
Have you thought about acting? Because I know you like film so much.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about acting, doing stand-up. I definitely want to get into screenwriting.
You do some writing now with... What is it that you do writing with? I've read something online that you...
Well, I wrote for VH1 for a year. I wrote for Creative Live, and I've kept my own blog pretty consistently, even though I haven't... It's been a while since I've written something. But that's just mainly I've just been so busy, and that's really the thing is you can have a million interests, but there's only so many hours in the day, and the more time you put in one thing, that means something else is atrophying. Yeah. And for me, I'm so nervous about not keeping my skills sharpened for music that I make sure I'm practicing and working on things constantly, so that when rehearsals come up or tours come up, I'm not feeling like I'm behind the ball. And it's, the stuff we do at Bad Wolves, it's definitely challenging. If I was in some punk rock band just playing like 4 chords, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I could work on a million other things, but with the style of music we do, I'm constantly having to kind of keep up and making sure that I'm not, falling behind.
For sure, man. I mean, you're doing a good job. I'm looking through Facebook and there he is hanging out with fucking Kurt Hammett and doing shit with those guys.
yes. Stuff like that, kind of comes up. But, I just had another, Rob hits me up all the time for little things. Sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. I like doing, I was on Shiprocked and played with the Stowaways and did that. And I've done a lot of the jam nights out here. I love playing, especially playing covers and just having fun with stuff like that. That's always a lot of fun. And just, being in different musical scenarios, 'cause that just keeps you sharp. It expands your kind of capacity. And so like when things like that turn up, but I'm actually the phase I'm in right now, like I've probably another month off. I'm from the road, that is. I'm gonna try and not take anything like that unless it's just really cool, kind of whatever. But just because I want to focus on some other things, because a lot of times that stuff can be very time consuming. You know, like I played with Mark Morton from Lamb of God on a tour, and that, you know, you got to learn a full, you know, hour set, you know, stuff like that. It's an undertaking, you know.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I mean, and there's little things you can do. Like I know we were hanging out at the Comedy Store, and you know, Johnny scored us. Thank you for hooking us up and getting us in there and hanging out. But he does that goddamn comedy jam thing, which I've seen some really big names, like, you know, not just comedians like Bill Burr and stuff, but other musicians show up, like Tom Morello will show up and stuff like that. So stuff like that, I think, is good for you to, you know, to do stuff like that. It keeps your skill going.
Well, I definitely want to meet as many people involved in other areas of the entertainment industry and kind of have those connections, because I just love being a part of it, and I want to learn every aspect of whether it's stand-up comedy or how films are made or television, because I really love that stuff. You know, I don't just watch films or television as just entertainment. I really, like, lately I've been watching things and trying to kind of reverse engineer the way the stuff is just put together, how the story is structured, and the script, and the way it's edited, and the shots. Like I'm really fascinated about that stuff, and you know, hopefully at some point I can start working on some other stuff. But like I said, right now it's hard because I'm in a full-time band, and it's difficult. You have to be just kind of a crazy person and never stop working.
Yeah, never sleep, never have a time. Like it's starting to happen to me, just keeping up with the podcast. My old band's like putting together music, so they send me stuff, and I'm sending them bass tracks back, and I realize, like, my days off, I'm still working. Like even when I don't have, like, do you have a day job at all? Or is the band kind of like...
Band is a day job.
Yeah, it's successfully, you know, paying all the bills and everything.
Yeah.
That's a blessing, dude.
Yeah, I mean, you do other stuff, you know, kind of here and there, and it, you know, since you have time off, you know, little things help out. But
well, that's good, man. Not a lot of people can say that they're doing what they want to do. Their love, passion of music, and using their talents to pay the bills. Because a lot of people have to juggle 2 or 3 jobs and go on tour. And then, like, my buddy Danny's like in 4 bands, and he also bartends in like 4 other bars. It's like, I don't even know how you live. How do you?
Yeah, I mean, I was bartending quite a bit when I, you know, really for a long time, and I, you know, luckily the band got busy and do well enough where I haven't had to bartend in a while. But you know, I always feel like you're always a 1 or 2 steps from kind of being back to what you were doing, you know, in this in this industry. So, you know, you kind of appreciate it as it is, but never kind of, you know, I'd say you want to stay desperate, and by stay
hungry. Yeah,
it's just realize, like, it's so hard to get in these positions. How do you maintain that? You know, and by that, it's just not being comfortable, not being too kind of like, yep, I got this. And listen, some people got this. They're fine. Their band isn't going anywhere. Their position isn't going anywhere. But I'm not that guy. So I'm always trying to stay on my toes and stay sharp.
That's good, man. And like you said, you have so many different interests that you're just opening up more avenues for yourself. You know, with the band getting successful, and if you wanted to do something else like comedy or something like that, like now you're opening doors for yourself, you know?
Yeah, we'll see, man. It's like I said, even though I'm interested in everything, I almost feel like, man, there's no way I'll be able to do all this stuff. But you never know. You kind of have to see, and it's something, like I said, I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, but I also have a lot of respect for every one of these things, and I don't feel like
half-assing it. No.
Exactly. I wouldn't just dip a toe and not kind of put everything into it, or else, because unless you're just some genius who can just, you know, kind of like, oh, I'm just naturally good there. Because we've seen, you know, people like Jamie Foxx and Donald Glover, you know, who can be, you know, multi-talented and have success in a lot of different realms. Yeah. You know, but we'll see.
Yeah, those are when you meet people like that, you can tell that they're just next level type people. Like I've met one of the few people that I met that I saw that was Xavier Woods. He's one of the WWE guys with the New Day, and I met him in person. We hung out and we just talked like a normal human being. But when the cameras came on, that was a different person, and you could see that spark of like, oh, wait a minute, this is a whole other level that he's operating on. You'll see it sometimes also at live shows, like, hang out with someone backstage and they're super chill. And then when they're on stage, they're a fucking rock star, and it's hard to pull off all the different talents. So I appreciate you giving the respect to the music and the time and the dedication. And then also the respect of like, you know what, when the time is right, I'll jump into that, jump into comedy or movies or something like that. Because I've met people that they're like, I want to be a musician and a pro wrestler, but you can't do both. Like you have to.
I don't know. Talk to Jericho.
Well, yes, but see, he did the pro wrestling thing for 25 years and then did the band thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to pull it off at the same time, you're not dedicating enough time to one of those things, right?
Yeah.
You have to dedicate yourself 100% to whatever it is you're trying to do. But I wrote notes here, little notes that are just completely random. Like I have basketball, Larry Bird.
Basketball, Larry Bird. What about Larry Bird?
I grew up admiring Larry Bird. He was my dude. And that whole time period of Bird and Jordan and Magic Johnson and the Dream Team, the USA Dream Team, 1992 was it, or 95?
That's 92.
92.
Yeah.
Like that was the time period when I was fascinated with basketball. And I kind of followed all the way through to pretty much about Jordan's retirement or move over to the Wizards or whatever. But I feel that it's not the same. Maybe it's just because I don't pay attention, but I don't feel like it's the same anymore. I know we still have star basketball players that people talk about, but that era just felt very different, like magical. Do you know why that is? Like, why can't I get back into basketball the way I was when I was a kid?
I mean, I don't know what to tell you because basketball right now is as relevant, culturally as it's ever been.
Sure, yeah.
If not more. I think. Listen, you have to look at it in a few different eras. So it was essentially in the 70s and early, going to the early 80s, the NBA was in a really down period and was kind of seen as like this league with, a lot of people on cocaine and people were ODing, and it was like they were fighting, and it was not really, it did not have a great public perception. And Magic Johnson and Larry Bird saved the NBA. Okay, and that rivalry, because it went back to college and went all the way, for basically 10 years almost, where they were going back and forth winning championships, and they were so marketable. And this it's gonna sound kind of fucked up, but because Larry Bird was white and you had a great white player, the majority. Listen, culturally, basketball is viewed as kind of like a black culture thing, but the truth is most of the consumers are white Americans. So that having a good white player really helped galvanize people and get them interested. And then Magic Johnson was so magnetic and charismatic and so great that really brought everything together. And then Jordan just took it home, because he's the greatest ever. Yeah. The dominance we hadn't seen since the Celtics from the 60s, the Bill Russell 60s, and his with the marketing and the Jordans and the McDonald's and the Gatorade and Space Jam. And he really, he's the most prominent athlete probably besides, like Muhammad Ali. Yeah. Then maybe like Tiger Woods to a certain degree and, a couple other people, but on a global scale. But there's only one Michael Jordan. So if you look at ratings and things like that, which I take with a grain of salt, because the truth is a lot more people were watching television, actual television back in the day. Yeah. But if you look at the numbers, this last few years with the Warriors and LeBron, we've had some of the biggest numbers, real big jumps, even though they did experience some decreases in this past season, partially because I think the Warriors were so dominant, people just got kind of bored. They felt it was like preordained. But I think this year coming up is going to be one of the best years ever because it's a wide open field for the first time in a really long time. No one knows who's going to win the championship, and that's amazing.
Well, I mean, I still love the sport. I every once in a while I'll dabble in. Like I know in 2006 I got back in for a while because I was actually working at the arena. I was doing the American Airlines Arena in Miami, and we were setting up shows there, and we had the finals. And they were like, "Hey, man, you want to stand in front of Jimmy Buffett while the Heat practice so he doesn't get hit in the face with a basketball?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I want to do all that." And, get to pass the ball to Shaq when Shaq was still in the Heat at that time. So I got really into it and followed every game. But then I kind of fell out. I feel like every time I checked in, I don't know who's in what team anymore. There's too much.
Yeah,
trading.
but that's a you thing.
I guess
This is the biggest kind of like psychological, I think, fallacy. One of the big ones that people have is because I stopped.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Getting into it, it stopped existing. Right, like I had a million people like we got with Pop Roach. Oh, Pop Roach is still a band, and they probably thinking these dudes are like homeless.
Right.
When in fact they're like as successful as they've ever been. They've never stopped. They've always had songs on the radio. They've been kicking ass, right? Yeah. And the NBA has had its lulls. It just hasn't been recently. The lulls were really after Jordan retired in the early 2000s. You had, really low scoring, slow pace basically from the early 2000s to about when LeBron came in the league. Even though he was drafted in 2003, it didn't really until he really stepped out in like 2007. That was the downtime. You had low scoring. You had most of your a lot of your major stars were sidelined with injuries. You had Tracy McGrady was going to be one of the greatest, got injured. Grant Hill was going to be one of the greatest, got injured. Anthony Hardaway was going to be one of the greatest, got injured. So you had all these guys, Vince Carter, like he was great and then kind of didn't really reach his potential. Got Yao Ming, he was great and he got injured. So you had Greg Oden was drafted, he got injured. So you had a lot of really guys that could have broken out that really didn't reach their apex. And the truth is, it's a stars league. So it was Jordan's league, then it was Shaq's league, and then it was LeBron's league, and LeBron and Kobe, right? Now, LeBron, probably will only play for maybe another 2 to 4 years, maybe. And you have to see who, there's tons of stars, but is there that one figure that's one of the greatest all time? And we have a few. I mean, Kevin Durant's one of the greatest to ever do it, but he just got hurt. James Harden is doing incredible things. Giannis Antetokounmpo is incredible. Steph Curry's, the greatest shooter of all time. You're seeing, you're in the middle of a dynasty. So I think the league is as talented as it's ever been. And a lot of that really has to do with the influx of great international players. Because back in the day, there was only a handful. And now every team, you're seeing this right now, the FIBA World Championship, USA plays 7th. And Spain, I think, won. And every team out there has NBA players on it. Back in the day, there was no NBA players on any other teams.
Right, it was just all the U.S. teams, yeah.
And so, the U.S. sent a C team. People say, it was the B team. No, it was a C team. I mean, I looked at the top 50 players rated last year in Sports Illustrated. The best player on that team was ranked 23rd. And that was Donovan Mitchell. And the next one was Kemba Walker, I think, was ranked like 28th or something. So those are the best players, and they're like that 20 guys said no before that. Right. So this is a C team, and the truth is, so you have all that influx. So some of the best players, Giannis is from Greece, but rerouted from Africa. Joel Embiid is from Cameroon. Kristaps Porzingis, from Latvia. What's his name? Who's on the rookie guy just won rookie of the year? I'm forgetting his name, but he's great on Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic. Oh. So a lot of the best players are international, and so you have just more talent, like top to bottom. Like I think they're going to expand and add 2 more teams because there's so much talent. Even the teams that aren't good have really good players on it.
I think my issue was eventually loyalty to the team. Like I felt, I guess when I was younger, when I was really into it and really into baseball too, and It was more about like I know that my team has those players. You know what I mean? Like I know that I can count on.
But the teams aren't loyal to the players. Why does the player have to be loyal to the team?
Oh no, I'm not saying they have to be. I'm just saying
but
that's
they're not.
That's what.
As soon as you stop being good, they get rid of you.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So it's a one way. Listen, the game has changed, and thank God. All right. Let me tell you, like that's a very old school way of like Bill Simmons always stuff. It's like it's like we don't have continuity. I'm like, that shit is boring. Like, I'm sorry, like seeing Stockton Malone run fucking pick and rolls for 15 straight years. This is like, oh, here's the same. I like because here's the thing. Back in the day, they used to sign people like 8-year contracts. Mm-hmm. Free agency was not that free. It was hard to get. There probably would have been a lot more player movement back in the day if players had the choice to do it. But this year you had more player movement. I think 40% of the league changed teams this past year, and that's fun. It's exciting. It's like it's like doing trades with your buddies and like mixing it up. And I think it's great. It's shorter contracts. I think people are taking, these are grown men. Like imagine you're like some big time software genius, right? Mm. And you get out of college and it's like Microsoft wants you and Apple wants you, and imagine if you couldn't choose. And you just got out of college, and it's like, you're working for Amazon, but I don't want to work at. Well, it doesn't matter. You don't have a choice.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
It is. No, it's definitely healthier.
And then you're there for 4 or 5 years, and you say, "Yeah, I think I want to work at Apple now." And then you're not loyal to Amazon. What are you talking about? I just want to go to. I'm sick of living in Seattle. I want to live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But we don't look at it like people need to put that is old dead thinking.
Yeah.
And I don't want any part of it. These are human beings who, like I said, if the team doesn't like them, they'll trade them in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I've seen guys get traded 3 or 4 times in one season. Can you imagine it? Having children in school.
Cities.
Or, you know what I'm saying? That shit's devastating.
Yeah.
But no one cares about them. Because we call them assets.
Right.
Oh, that team, they have some really good pieces. Because that's what we do. We dehumanize them. We think they're like, it's like fantasy sports, and they're just little, we're
numbers
2K, they're little minions we can move around. These are human beings, and they should be able to do what the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And loyalty, it's got nothing to do with it. Why are, like me, I'm a Knicks fan, but the players always change. So what? I'm loyal to a logo.
Yeah.
I'm loyal to a city. It's even fandom is ridiculous. The truth is, I like a player. I like a team. It's just fun. For me, I like the team because it's fun to root for that team. It's like, that's my team. Yeah. It just makes it more fun. But ultimately, it's like, why am I loyal to the team? The owner? I like the owner. The owner's a dick. The rich guys just take, they suck the community dry.
Yeah. It's more nostalgia shit. It's more like me, I grew up around the Yankees and Don Mattingly and all that, and once it started changing and evolving like that, I kind of just realized like, oh, they're just buying the best players.
Me too. That bummed me out too.
I was like, it's kind of.
But you don't have that. You don't have that in basketball because you can't. You have salary caps. You can't buy like New York, LA have the most money, and has nothing. They don't get the best players because it doesn't matter. It's who runs their team the best and is the smartest with how they spend their money and draft players and make moves. It's a lot more. You have to be a lot more strategic to actually build a winning team. It takes more skill as opposed to we just spend the most money. Give them more money.
Exactly. Yeah, it really turned me off. That turned me off from baseball completely. And I mean, I still watch it every once in a while. Whenever I'm with Adam, he makes me go to games and stuff with him. So I get back into. I love the sport. I used to play in high school, and I love baseball, but just that whole drama of like, we're just going to buy the best players. And then basketball, when I started seeing so many trades happening, I'm on the outside. I'm not like that big of a fan where I'm looking at stats and all that stuff. So I started kind of seeing I'm like, is that what's happening with basketball? I'm going to stop watching. I don't really
I think
care.
people in basketball, the thing now is like people are more into players. Yeah. Team, so it's like I'm a LeBron fan. So wherever LeBron goes, I root for him.
You root for him.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. No. Who cares?
I mean, I myself, I've moved cities. Like a lot of my friends are like, "Oh, your home is Miami." I'm like, actually, I was born in Jersey, dude. Miami's was home for 20 years, but it's not my hometown. I'm from Jersey, and now I'm in California, so I get it. You find a player that you like and follow it.
Not me. I'm a Knicks fan, baby. All right, I'll always be a Knicks fan. Ride or die.
Ride or die.
That's right.
It's like the Miami Dolphins fans. They're like, oh God, the football. I don't know. Do you watch football at all?
I mean, I haven't in the last few years, especially since the Giants won. But I like football. I just I feel like I like this sport, but I think the vibe around football kind of just bums me out. Like fantasy, people like fantasy and kind of like, I don't know, I guess the aggressive male machismo mindset around football. Watching football, like it's so like
it's a bunch of dudes with concussions.
So aggro. It's like we got the guacamole, we got the chicken wings. It's just it's a lot, That's just how people are excited about it in a way, and it's like, man, it needs to be. It ain't tough anymore, man. Yeah. It's like, I get all that. It's just, but I do like football, but maybe the whole vibe around it just. It's a little much for me.
Yeah, there's a lot more from what from the outside. I hear a lot more of like the scandal situations in football.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of that. There's the way they've treated the head injury stuff, the way they've kind of, like I said, dealt with the situations with guys who have done shitty things and not been punished. But then you have people like the Colin Kaepernick situation and kind of. A lot of that kind of culture war stuff that I think is, not really helpful, and it feels like the owners, it's like that the no fun league, like that kind of thing. It just doesn't seem fun. It seems a bit more stringent and kind of, I don't know.
Have you heard about the XFL?
I mean, I remember the XFL.
It's coming back, 2020. Yeah. Vince McMahon
is he hating me coming back?
Probably. I know they're doing there's a team for LA now. I forget what they're called. I think the Phoenixes. I don't know.
So what's the deal with that? What made the XFL different?
Just a little more. Okay, so did you ever play video games of like football video games when you were growing like NFL Blitz?
I probably played nothing since like Tech Mobile.
Well, there's like if the way I describe it to people is there was football games like the Madden games are very like serious and you have your teams and the stats or whatever, and then there was the NFL Blitz games which had all the teams but you can tackle someone super hard, and there was like turbo, and you can go faster, and kind of like NBA Jam.
Yeah.
And that's what the XFL is. There's just less rules, a little more violence, a little more like faster pace.
What'd you think about this? What if in football, because people said there would be less concussions and stuff if they didn't wear helmets or didn't wear.
Oh fuck, man!
No, because people use the helmet as a weapon,
right? Yeah.
So if you were putting yourself in harm's way, there would just be less. There would actually be safer.
Maybe. I think it sounds dangerous. There should be something.
I think it would be more like personal. I feel like any sport where you're like all covered up is just less personal, which is why I think basketball players are the most. Even though basketball is not the biggest sport, it's like the third biggest sport if you look at like the ratings and things like that. They're the most famous players because you can see them.
Yeah,
they're out there more. You can see them like if they're like upset or they're fucking there. You can see their personalities and the way they express themselves. But I feel like they're all covered up. And there's 50 people on the field, and you're like, who's this guy? I don't. You feel like you're watching a video game half the time.
Yeah, it's mostly like football is mostly team based like that because like you said, you can't really tell who's playing or what and. I don't know. I think it could be interesting, but I'd still want them to wear something, maybe like a soft pad around their head or something.
Yeah, but that's not what. It's not that people get their skull split open. It's that when your head's in the helmet, your brain still rattles around.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true. I don't know, man. It sounds interesting to me, but I'm scared of shit like that because I've seen those football. They fucking smash into each other really hard.
But they would smash less hard if they were.
Would it be as exciting? I guess that's the question. I watch. The only sport I actually keep up with now is MMA. So I watch UFC fights, and there's that discussion of like, well, now there's bare knuckle championships, and do you want to wear gloves? Like, is it safer? As people are getting more injuries. It's.
They're getting more injuries from bare knuckle?
Well, yeah, because you're getting like punched right in the face with bone. Like
it's harder.
It's a lot harder.
Plus, it's probably harder on your hands, right?
Yeah, you break hands a lot easier. The fights are faster. Like I had Chris Lieben on the podcast, and he was telling me, he's fought twice now for them, and the fights are less than 2 minutes because they just come out, swing until somebody falls down. And it's like, yeah, that's exciting, but also kind of scary, man. I
think it's all scary.
It's pretty scary. I mean, I like fights. I'm a violent human, unfortunately. Just my blood, my entire heritage is just violence and rape. Unfortunately, like
what are you talking about?
My blood is all. So I'm Cuban, but also Spaniard, and it's like the part of Spain that my grandfather's from got raped and pillaged by the Celts. Mm-hmm. So there's that violence and rape going on. And then the Spaniards also took Africans and took them to Cuba. And that's where we come from. Like, that's more rape and slavery and violence and bullshit. So
do you think that's in your blood?
It's in there. I definitely have violent tendencies that I don't have an explanation for. Like, I'll have times where I just get road rage. And I'm like, why? Why am I angry? Probably because of these savages that were part of my heritage.
Yeah, I would like to know more about that. I feel like I make a joke about this, just that people, it's like, I drink a lot. I'm Irish. Like, no, not motherfucker. You just like to drink, all right? Don't motherfucking Ireland have nothing to do with that fucking.
I will say that there is
third shot you're taking.
It's not, when it comes to stuff like that with the Irish and the drinking, it's not like there is something there. I don't know how much of it is. I don't know how much science is behind it, but definitely a tolerance level.
No, tolerance is fine, but I think collectively we use things like that as an excuse to say why I can't. I'm not in control. I'm not running the ship. It's just genetics, baby.
It's genetics.
I'm just a passenger. I didn't want to.
Well, that's a lot of racism comes from that shit because people are like, oh, I don't know, man. My family was that way. I guess.
That's different. That's literally physically growing up with a certain indoctrination in your lifetime. I'm talking about stuff that happened generations earlier, and you're saying, well, that's why I'm this way. Yeah. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know. I don't know.
It's an interesting subject for sure.
Yeah, because what we're talking about is personality.
Yeah,
personality. We're not talking about, I have diabetes in my family.
Sure.
Oh, I have cancer. Oh, I go bald because my fucking great grandfather went bald. We're not talking about that. We're talking about personality, and I really would be interested to know what.
Well, I guess it's metaphorical when I say it's in my blood. Like my dad was violent, and so was my grandfather before him, and the great grandfather before him.
My father has a temper, and pretty sure my grandfather had a temper. I don't really have much of a temper, so I don't. But that stuff you also saw your father.
Yeah,
you probably saw your grandfather. It's you. That's a learned thing. Mm-hmm. It'd be different if you were like, lived with another family. You never met your father, right. And all of a sudden you acted like that's. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
which I'm sure happens. I'm sure I've seen or that's. Yeah.
But the thing is, when people say, "Oh, nature or nurture," there's no such thing as nature without nurture. Everything, nothing exists in a vacuum. There's still an environment with which you have to come up in, and that will affect you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of irrelevant of nature versus nurture. It's like, well, no, the nature's part of it, and they've done this. What they've learned about a lot of genetics is that what essentially your genetics, where they work, is that it's potentials. So you have, and this is like mental illness and stuff, or certain things like, oh, I have if I'm under these circumstances, then these markers potentially could come up. So and that's how a lot of that stuff works.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting subject because I don't know how it works, and I know that there are people that I've met that come from Irish families or whatever that have they have no self-control if they even have a drop of booze or something, and they go crazy. Like me, I can.
But you just said it was tolerance. That's the opposite of tolerance.
Well,
that's not having tolerance.
Yeah.
That's just wanting to drink a lot. That's alcoholism.
And there's people that it's in their. I guess I'm okay. So English is my second language, so I have kind of a barrier there. But I want to say it's in their blood where if they taste alcohol, they just can't stop drinking. Like me, I can stop drinking. Yeah. I've done it. I've taken 4 months, 5 months off, not a single beer, not a single drink. not a problem. But there's people that when they do that, they change. Their personality change. Everything changes about them. They get more aggressive. And I feel like that's got to have some, aside from just psychological, upbringing, there's got to be something else. There's like a little layer there.
No, I think you are right, that we're all affected in these different ways, and certain things can be a trigger for whatever. And that definitely, from what I've heard, is genetic.
Yeah.
For having, that's addiction, right? So that addiction that could be for drugs, that could be for food, that could be for being on the internet, porn, fucking gambling, whatever.
Violence,
Exactly. I mean, and anger and things like that. You know?
I wanted to ask you something, because I don't really get to talk about this type of stuff with a lot of people, especially nowadays. Everybody's very sensitive and very apprehensive to talk about stuff like this. But your heritage, where is it? You're all African, or is it mixed?
No, I'm half black, so I mean African American, but that's still a mix of Native American and white and whatever. I don't really know. I've never done one of those tests. And then my father is half Irish, quarter Polish, and then like Dutch or some shit. I don't know.
So your father was predominantly white, European.
Yeah.
And your mother was African,
black. Yeah.
So, in terms of Latinos and them being able to claim certain things, it's like my blood has African blood.
Of course, that's it's the same people. The reason why people come up to me speaking Spanish or talking is it's literally the same mix.
Yeah,
with Latin people or Central South America and a lot of the islands and all that stuff. It was Native Americans. African slaves and Europeans.
Yeah.
That's basically what I am too. It's just, but we kind of view it the way it's viewed because it's coming through from a different culture. But you go to Latin countries. They're playing black people.
Oh yeah. Cuba especially. There's a lot of black humans.
Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Brazil. You go to there are just black people, and there are white people too.
Yeah, they're all blue-eyed Cubans.
Yeah, and they all come from the same. And so it's a mishmash.
Yeah,
that's what America is.
I get shit sometimes from people when I tell them that. I'm like, hey, I have African blood, and they're like, no, you can't say that. You're not black. And I'm like, but it's there, and like you can. I'm like very visibly not a white dude. You know what I mean? I have curly black hair on my face and brown skin, like. And they make it seem like I'm racist. Like, oh, why?
Well, no,
it's not racist.
You know what it is? It's a lot of, I think, the black community in America. There is kind of like this idea of a dominion over like blackness. Like this is our thing,
right?
And this is like and I think that's shown with. The hullabaloo around, cultural appropriation, ideas, for us, by us.
Right.
This is like, I remember when I talked this on my podcast when, Bill Maher called himself a house nigger on his show. And, then Ice Cube came on and was kind of pissed off. He's like, that's our thing. That's our word. It's like this kind of ownership of blackness, which is kind of inherently hypocritical to me, because a lot of the conversation is how your blackness and the history around that of slavery and Jim Crow and institutional racism and all this stuff has hurt you, has taken, like, this has been a disadvantage for getting jobs, for getting fucked with by the police, for getting strange looks when you're on an elevator, just whatever, all these these deficiencies because of your blackness, but then all of a sudden wanting to claim kind of sole protection of that blackness and have no one do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's this weird idea of, hey man, being black is really hard for me, but no, you can't have it. It's mine, which I guess makes some kind of sense if you kind of break it down. Like, we're all kind of hypocrites, but that kind of being able to step from one perspective to the other and use it. And it's, unfortunately it's kind of, being convenient about it, you know. And the thing is, I think we shouldn't. Personally, I have no thoughts like that, but I'm also, you know, like I said, I'm a mixed race person whose identity is really trying to oscillate between both ways of seeing the world. I don't identify myself because most people that are biracial usually lean one way, how they identify to the world. In me, I think that would be. I just don't think that makes sense to me.
That's detrimental.
I'm black. I'm white, right? Because think about it. If I say, well, you know, people see me as this, but I feel white, so I'm gonna live white, or I'm gonna identify like, or even though, but you know, it's like I said this before. People say Barack Obama, first black president. Well, he's mixed. He's biracial. Yeah, he has a white mother, but they call him the black president, and I guarantee you that's the way he identifies because that's the way the world treats him. Mm-hmm. You know, and oftentimes that's how you know, ultimately our society is going to view me as black, even though I'm half black, or you know, I'm light toned, but my features and things like that. But I definitely don't understand trying to have dominion over blackness, or it's about kind of, you know, a lack of wanting to find common ground, right? And so you're saying, hey man, we're all brothers, man. We're all fucking we have a lot in common, and people trying to shut down those commonalities, I think, is really destructive.
Yeah, it's destructive. It definitely feeds this like weird time that we're at, where just everybody's kind of split. Like the country's split. There's all the people that hate each other just for the color of their skin, or like Mexicans and Latinos are getting it hard now because of this whole Trump thing. You know, it's shitty. It's shitty, and we should be united, trying to be united, but it's starting to feel more and more like that's probably not possible. Like I live my life balanced out. Like I'm Cuban and Latino. I know how to salsa dance. I used to teach people how to salsa dance, but I'm also a metalhead, and I'm also into video games. I don't identify as one particular thing. Like,
but all those other things are the commonalities, right? Like you can be at a metal show, and there could be a bunch of different races and different genders and gay people and, you know, all that whole, but our common thing is we love the music, right? That brings us together. Video games, you can go to like a video game conference and it's like all shapes and sizes, but your common thing is video games. And that's really, you know, culture has split, you know, between the red states and the blue states and conservative and liberal, and you're pro-abortion, I'm anti-abortion, I'm pro-gun, you're anti-gun. And that's really become a dividing line where now people are self-segregating themselves and saying, well, if you're a Trump supporter, I'm not going to be your friend. Right. If you're this, I don't want to hang out with you. Oh, I'm sick of fucking LA. There's all these fucking liberals. I need to get out of here, right? I've heard that a bunch of times. Yeah. So people don't want to coexist with people who have different ideologies.
That's so whack, man.
And listen, part of that is naturally self-selecting. So people in urban centers tend to lean certain ways politically. People in rural areas tend to lean a certain way. And so part of that is self-selecting. So people just like a certain lifestyle. They like being in a city and being in a melting pot and riding the subway and, you know, kind of living a more metropolitan kind of lifestyle. Some people, they like it where it's quiet and they got more land, they go hunting, they go fishing, they can relax. Like that's just a vibe thing. And because those lifestyles are different, you're going to have the way policies affect you. You're going to, you know, like it's like some people live in farmland. They have a gun because the police station is 20 miles away. If someone that's the only way they can protect themselves is with a gun. Right. Or that, you know, hey man, these, you know, these mountain lions are coming in and eating my, you know, my animals. So I have to, so there's practical reasons that they might be more pro-gun. Right. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, and that goes for a lot of different issues. There's more practical, like, oh, this works for me because blank. But people don't really have a lot of empathy for that. They hear like these caricatures created by media figures and stuff. And so they look at people that disagree with them as like, you know, these cartoonish bad guys.
Right.
And listen, there's plenty of cartoonish bad guys in each side that you can point to as being ridiculous, but it's just it's really unfortunate. But me, I'll never stop being optimistic that what we're going through now is what we need to go through. We might not make it out of it whole, but I do think, because I think what happened with Obama was we thought, oh, this means we're not racist. This means we're all gonna come together. And the truth was, his presence, it was like, what does it happen when you like boil stuff and the fat comes to the top?
Oh yeah,
that process. That's what it reminded me of, is that all this stuff that was underneath came to the top. Like, so all the rhetoric around Trump and immigrants and, he's from Kenya and all that stuff, all that racial resentment that people kind of kept under wraps came to the surface. That was with, Trayvon Martin's killing and all that stuff. That was real, like a big, all the shootings, and that kind of told you where you stood. And so I think what we're in now is like, I think if people have issues with race, I'd rather know about it. I don't want them to be silent. I don't want them to keep it to themselves. You got to talk about it. And I think, listen, it's not a great environment for that, because people want to cancel people, or you said this, that was inoffensive, and that means you're a piece of shit. It's like this dude, Joe Walsh, who's running against Trump, has said some really fucked up things racially. And he admitted to it. But people on the left are like, man, fuck that guy. Once you say it, it kind of means you're a pariah. And it's like, that's just dumb. We should all have a chance to learn from our mistakes and evolve.
For sure. I mean, I know I've made mistakes, and I regret and move forward. And it's weird, man. I feel that, I don't know how you feel about it, but you said you're optimistic and you have hope about making it through this whole thing.
I'll always be optimistic.
I feel optimistic, but I also feel like we need a drastic change. Like
what does that mean?
Everything is evolved. We're living in a different time, right? You look at the Constitution, everybody claims and calls out, and it's like that shit was all written a long ass time ago. We didn't have computers. Like, life is completely different now. So I think our foundations should be different. Like, we should evolve with that as well. And that could mean anything from like splitting.
That's why we have amendments.
Well, yeah, but I feel like there needs to be more changes, like in terms of just, maybe we don't need to be 51 or 50 states all together. Like, it could be 2 separate countries, whatever. You go over there.
Maybe that'll eventually happen. And hopefully if it does happen, it happens peacefully and not, in something crazy. Because, listen, I think that's part of it, is that, does it make sense that we should have the same laws in California as we do in Montana, as we do in Alabama, as we do in Maine? And
it's also muddled with the state laws versus federal laws. If you're not up to date with all of the laws, like, you don't even know what the hell's going on in your state.
Yeah, maybe, listen, like I said, maybe things, but our system is tough. It was built to make it tough to change laws, and it's even harder now because of all the Senate rules and the filibusters and all this stuff. And they don't do a whole lot, and it's hard to, that's, people get pissed off at Obama and Trump for doing a lot of executive orders, but the truth is, it's really difficult to get any kind of consensus on just about any of these bills, because if you don't have 60 votes, then they'll filibuster, and they don't even have to physically do it. They can just say they're going to filibuster, and that's it. It's done. And things are so split. The Senate, it's like 54. I think it's like, might be Republican by like 1 or 2 senators. And the majority of the votes, like, it's still Democrats won more votes. Like, if you would go up who voted for who, but because of the way it's set up, there's more red states, and they get more power.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing, and I think it's just tough to get things done. But the structural stuff is what it is. Like, I think that stuff is, I'm less optimistic on that. I'm more talking about the tenor of the conversations that we're having, that during times that are really fucked up, like right now. I think some of that is just growing pains, and hopefully we'll learn from this period, and that'll take us to the next period, or maybe it'll get worse. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what do you think about that? Some people have that idea of the it's like the Batman thing, where like the escalation. Well, like, so now we just went through 4 years of Trump. If we were to swing in the pendulum swings in the opposite direction, we have this extreme left situation. Do you think that would be the case? Like,
Listen, I think things balance themselves out, and the pendulum does swing back and forth. I think Trump is uniquely polarizing, and he uniquely galvanizes a certain emotion amongst people, and so like things like Antifa, right? If it wasn't for Trump, you wouldn't have Antifa, right? If it wasn't for Obama, you wouldn't have had the Tea Party, right? Like things are reactionary. That's how these movements are created. And I don't think on the left side, unless Bernie won, who's obviously a self-described socialist, I don't think anyone is particularly that polarizing. Even though someone like Elizabeth Warren, I think, for example, is very much a progressive and is really, he wants to do a lot of transformative things with healthcare and the financial system, really wants to come down hard on the banks and financial regulation. And some of that stuff probably would be controversial on the right, but it doesn't matter. Whoever gets the nomination is going to be called the worst thing. And, unfortunately, I think it's we're in this fight between centrism and extremism. The truth is both sides have gone really far to the left and right. The right started it, but the left, in the sense, because that's what happens when something like Trump happens. It creates, because no one expected it to happen, and he's such a dick.
yeah.
And he doesn't, and he's the first president in my lifetime that doesn't seem to care about getting everyone. All he cares about is his own base, which I've never seen. Every other president has always been like, "Hey guys, we're all together. Let's come on," So that created a real spike. But there's so it's this idea between, we ran a centrist last time and she lost. Both times when the Republicans ran, John McCain and Mitt Romney were both centrists, center right, and they lost. And it's this thing of, I think if it's a country where every time someone wins, there are more on the fringe, I think it's bad for the country. Like centrism, I get it. It's status quo. It's incremental change. It's frustrating for people who want radical change, but and the truth is that when you have enough centrism, that also causes people to go far. So they're like, well, we're getting a diet version of what we really want. And that's what, it's like, and that's what Republicans will say about the Bushes and things like that. Well, they gave it to us, but it wasn't, they always want more. So
yeah,
I don't know, that stuff, I don't think that's going anywhere. But to me, that's our number one biggest political problem is division and partisanship.
Yeah.
Because I think it's corrosive and it's dangerous.
Definitely, man. I get really deep into weird existential things because I had a crazy out of body experience and car accidents that took me out of my body unexpectedly and did a bunch of research on that, and just we're in a frequency of sound, right? We're tuned in to a thing, and if you're off on just by a hair, it causes a separation. And us spreading like this, like if the next 4 years are more extreme left or whatever, then it's just causing more separation. And we should be balanced. We should be together, balanced. Like we don't need to agree with everyone, but we need to coexist with each other so that we can flourish together up. And what I mean?
But here's the thing. But here's the thing though. If you were to go policy by policy, most of the things that are considered to be on the left side are the people want. Like they want higher taxes on corporations and rich people. They want to have free healthcare. They want to, having free colleges. These things are popular. They've done. They want universal background checks on guns. So a lot, that's not for everything, but the truth is there are more people on the liberal side than there are on the Republican side in the country. I mean, but we just happen to be clustered in different areas. So if you were to go, so you look at those electoral maps, it's like, it looks like, oh, it's all red. Well, no, because that's land. It's not people. Like, just because you have a lot of land around you doesn't mean you're actually like, you're worth more.
If you the electoral votes in like smaller states have 100
the majority of the country is a little more level. It's not dramatic, but it's just a little more. So the truth is, I think a lot of these policies would ultimately benefit people, but it would change the country. And I think it's about, and this is assuming any of this stuff could even happen. But just because someone gets elected doesn't mean they can get all the things done they want. And that's the thing, is you just don't know what's going to happen. But it's like, why is it that every Western country, wealthy country, has nationalized healthcare except for America? Like, that just seems like that basic fact seems like,
regardless of whatever you believe, like that. Just
I mean,
those numbers.
so it can't. But if you talk to someone on the right, they'll be like, that's tyranny. That's the end of freedom. So you're like, so all those countries, so Australia is a tyranny. Canada's a tyranny. Japan's a tyranny. Germany's no. You're just saying, well, we're America and I like it the way it is, and I don't want things to change. And it'll be different, but that's a big thing. And something like that, if it did happen, dude, it would be crazy because people would lose their shit. They would be, they'd be marching, they'd be at their,
Well, how about this? So instead of thinking of the negative possibility of us splitting as a country, why don't we have 2 presidents? Why has that never been discussed? Of like, we'll have a Republican and a Democrat, and we'll work together to make the country better. Because obviously we have separate groups, and it's every election, like the left or the right, the blue or the red. Why don't we have 2 presidents representing each of us so that everyone is represented instead of just...
Well, why would it be 2? Like usually...
Well, of course, there's 2 spread out more.
Then if they disagree on everything, then it's a stalemate.
Maybe, but
no. I don't listen.
Maybe 3. Have a third.
Here's the thing.
The third eye.
Have an independent. Yeah. Actually, that's not a terrible idea. No, listen. I think you're right in that. Whatever the current system, I think we should be open to evolving it and developing something that, putting all that. Like me, I have a different idea. I think there should be 2 positions. One, I think you should have a person. I actually kind of almost similar, but like it really should be 3 jobs.
Yeah.
One job should be the spokesperson. There's the one who gives the speeches and pumps people up, right? He's kind of like the
face.
He or she is like the face. Mm-hmm. And then there should be someone who does foreign policy and someone who does domestic policy. Because those are all different jobs, and we want one person to be good at all of it. We want someone to be charismatic and be great at speaking and inspiring and consoling and all this stuff, right? And connecting. I want to have a beer with them. But we also want that person to be an expert on domestic and foreign policy. And those are different. They're so drastically different, right? Like if I have a governor, someone who's been a governor for 8 years, they're going to know domestic policy. They're going to know about taxes, and they're going to understand about budgets and all that stuff, right? But if you're a governor, why would you know what's going on in Syria or in Russia, right? You know what I'm saying? I think that's the problem, is that you want one person to be really good at all those things. And the truth is, the main thing we care about is the PR thing. We want them to give good speeches and be good at debates. Like I was like, what the fuck does being good, winning a debate, have to do with actually being president? Yeah, almost nothing.
Nothing.
It's more. It's like a game show. Yeah. It's we can follow the horse race, and I can know who won, and it's fun, and it's like, oh, it's like I'm voting on fucking American Idol or something, right? So, like I said, I didn't think your idea was bad, but I do think we should be open about, hey, is this like the best system? Is it even good to put that much pressure on one person? So that they feel...
Obviously not. You see the transition these presidents go through after like Obama. You look at him, fresh, nice full black head of hair, and finishes off. He's like a grandpa. Like the amount of stress.
Yeah, and he, the thing is, Trump looks younger now.
he's feeding off of the stress.
Dude, he's doing great. I'm telling you, Trump's gonna live to be 130 years old, man. That dude's never gonna die. He's fucking...
There's the other aspect of this country, which I think I'm falling into, which is where I'm just starting to lose interest.
Oh, me too. I've got complete exhaustion.
Everything looks like a cartoon to me. Like I'm looking, and Trump is coming out to speeches to Metallica, and he's also a WWE Hall of Famer. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I just lose interest in it. I don't even know what to do anymore. Like, I think something else needs to happen. But
yeah, listen, I think people have been saying this stuff probably forever. And I don't think there's, and I think if you really, even though there's a lot of fucked up things going on, things have been way worse.
sure,
You know, whether you're talking about, World War II and, and having, half
Great
the
Depression.
Great Depression. You talk about 1968 with, you had, ML, that was, MLK was 68. It was MLK, Robert Kennedy, all the riots, and you had, Kent State. I mean, Vietnam, you're talking some 50,000 young men died, so, I mean,
It's really easy to think that shit is the worst when it's not.
And there are but the thing is, there are certain things that I think are worse, but there's, like if you look at the crime statistics for how bad violent crime was in America between the mid 70s into the early 90s, I mean, we're talking double, triple what is so. So think, it's being able to look at, okay, what's better, what's worse. Like there's certain things, like they've done this study about empathy in America, and it's gone down. It's at a low point ever that people have less empathy for other people, and I think there's some very clear reasons for that. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that so much is there's a barrage of shit. So everything that's bad that's happens in the world, it's broadcasted over. And I think when you see it, but back then when you never would see stuff, like there might be a fucking famine or a genocide going on somewhere,
and you don't know.
It wasn't on your front door.
Yeah.
But now if like one black dude gets like his ass beat or shot by the police, and that's your issue, and you watch it over and over, it feels like just because you're seeing, your mind almost thinks, well, I'm seeing this one. That means there must be a million of it happening. Yeah. Or if it's like, oh, this shit's happening in Syria and the little kid dead in the water. And you're like, once you see it after a while, you're like, yo, even with me with fucking like school shootings and shit, I don't even blink anymore. Mm-hmm. Right? Like you're just like, yep, another shooting. Yeah. Because you know why? Because if your empathy was jacked up, you couldn't even function. Yeah. You couldn't go to work. You couldn't fucking brush your teeth because you would be so distraught.
Well, I think
it's a coping mechanism.
I think there's still that though. Like I was talking to my girl about this yesterday, and I think that there's folks like you and I, we get numb, and the empathy is low, but there also is an increase in people that are suffering from mental illness and anxiety and
because they're taking all that shit in. They're like they look at the sadness of the world and they're like, why should I live? Why should I do this? Yeah. So or just people being pissed off all the time. Like one thing I'll say is like people say fake outrage. I'm like, well, that's a little projection. I think it's just outrage. Whether it's fake or not, you don't really know. So I think some people are literally like upset by shit and it like ruins their day. Mm-hmm. And they get really, I don't really use the fucking the kind of the anti-PC, anti-SJ, terminology. I don't use like triggered and fucking all that. Snowflake. Yeah, I think it's really destructive words because I think the whole purpose is to
make someone feel different.
Say no, it's I'm strong, you're weak.
Right. Yeah.
It makes by saying you're triggered, it makes you feel good. Another person that
it's ego driven.
Yeah. And so I don't think it's really helpful. But I do think there are a lot of people out there who they go on Twitter or they, there's something happens and they get amped up and they get ramped up and it's, I think for me, like I said, I have to shut it down.
Yeah. I
have to like turn off the news just to survive. Cause I remember after the election, I went into a depression for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people did, but I did. And I was like, I was like, why is this bumming me out so much? Why was I so invested in this? I'm like, listen, it's not great, but at the same time, like, it's just politics. It's a guy in somewhere far away that's doing shit that 90% of it will never affect me.
And you have no control over.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do. It's over.
Yeah.
You gotta accept it, and just move on and see like, okay, what else is going on,
Yeah, I've grown up, thankfully, in that, like, ever since I was young, I moved out early and just kind of figured out life. And that's kind of what you have to do because you can't control all of that. I got into that depression, too. I was at a daughter's show when he became president, and I just remember everyone bummed out. Everyone on their phones, like, what the fuck? I left. I didn't even watch Daughters. I went to see them, and I just like, I'm just going to go home because I'm in the middle of L.A. We might have riots. I'm just going to get the fuck out of here.
You know what? It was just... I remember going to Starbucks the next day, and everyone was just
bummed, heads down.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm sure if you were in like some farm town in fucking Louisiana, they were grinning.
We don't got to go that far, man. El Segundo had giant Trump banners and balloons everywhere. So
yeah, and that's and I think that's you are right about this idea of like. Half the people, it's really not half because only about half the people vote, so it's really like a quarter of the people who that it's these giant swings in emotional, like you said, like if a progressive wins, then you're gonna have that group of people who are just really happy are gonna also now they're gonna be really angry, and that's like it's just not good. The swings, like we should be kind of like disappointed, right? Like well.
Yeah,
get them next time.
Our team didn't win this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's but these things because it only happens every 4 years. It feels so definitive,
right,
and final and like drastic. So, and it really is. I mean, you look at the policies; it couldn't be further apart.
Yeah,
and so there are fundamental changes that will be affected for a long time. But I don't think it used to be like that. It's like when when it went from George H.W. Bush to Clinton, I don't think that was a real drastic change in like the fundamental way they did business. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think it was a little more, it's from, even Clinton to George W. Bush. It wasn't that big of a difference, even though there was some differences, but it still had some consistency. Whereas now it's like I said, I do think Trump is an aberration. Unless his like kids win, but even his kids don't, have his kind of personality and bombast. He really is a singular figure, and I don't think it'll be a systemic kind of thing. Oh, now we're gonna have reality show people. You don't
think The Rock's gonna be president at some point?
But at least The Rock is at least someone that everything he's ever done, he's been the best at.
Yeah.
And that tells me someone who's willing to, whatever he's doing, he puts 100% in it. And he's so I don't like, to me, it's like at this point, if Donald Trump would be president, then just about, if the country doesn't like just implode and he's president, then I'm like, I think pretty much, because there's so many people that do things for you. And they've even had, there's all these reports, I read Bob Woodward's book, and it's like Trump, like, hey, we need to do this, and they just won't do it.
Yeah,
like there was stuff in the Mueller report about that he basically wanted to obstruct and collude, and people just didn't follow his orders. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, and because the attempt, they can't prosecute on the intent.
Yeah,
they can only prosecute on what actually happened. And so I think when you have something like that, I think there are enough responsible people there to kind of stop, like they had some shit like they, I read something about the nuclear codes and stuff, like they like just got it away from them. They just wouldn't let them.
We're gonna take these keys away from you.
Yeah, like I forget where I read it, but it does seem like there's enough framework, and it's like, hey, if it is gonna be mostly a symbolic job and it really is about the face, and the policy really could be enacted by your staff and kind of the people that actually have to do it on the ground, who knows? Who am I to say? A lot of people are like, it needs to be back to this. I'm like, does it? I don't know.
No, I think a new thing is what we need. But
listen, I can't wait till we have a boring ass president that we can just ignore.
Yeah,
I'm counting for the days of that.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't like Trump, but he is the perfect president at this time in terms of just the weird culture. Like it's that TV, people who watch reality TV, and
holding up a mirror to us.
Right, exactly.
It's reflective. You get the leaders you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And we've earned this, and so you earned it. Take your medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait for the clock to run out. Exactly. And listen. If he wins again, then that you deserve that too. You earned it, and that's what. And guess what? We all have to be prepared for that, and say, you know what, it is what it is. And say, hey, I was alive for this crazy fucking shit to happen.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I think that's a good note to end it. Almost 2 hours. It's probably one of my longer podcasts.
Right on. Give it an hour. That's how I do it, man. I go long.
So everyone listening, October 25th, Nation. Big tour, Five Finger Death Punch.
Yeah. Well, with 2 tours. We have a U.S. tour with Five Finger, 3 Days Grace, Fire from the Gods, and we're doing a lot of like secondary markets. We're not playing like California at all on that tour, so it's not really West Coast. Actually, no. Well, we're doing Vegas. I'm sorry. So there's some West Coast stuff, but it's a lot of like tertiary markets, as they call it. And then in January, we do a European tour with Five Finger Death Punch and Megadeth.
Nice.
And we're going everywhere with that.
And you got a few headliners.
Yes.
As well. What is your fantasy tour?
Fantasy tour? I mean, I've done most of my fantasy tours. I've toured Metallica. I've toured with the original lineup of Slayer. I've toured with the original lineup of, not the original lineup, but the Among Living lineup of Anthrax. Megadeth. That was a big one. I've never toured with Maiden, but no, I mean, I'd love to listen. Even though I've toured with some of these bands, with Bad Wolves. We haven't. Like, I'd love to do a tour with Slipknot. I'd love to go out with Korn.
Nice.
Rammstein. That would be fucking amazing.
Rammstein's great. Yeah.
Trying to think. It'd be great for us to. I would love to tour with Killswitch. I think, even though I've toured with them a million times, I just think with Bad Wolves that would be a really cool vibe.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, yeah. Keep an eye out. They are coming to your town. And the album's coming out. Pick it up October 25th. Dude, thank you so much for your time, brother. I appreciate it. Cheers, everyone.
Peace.
I should've known know. You're everything I need, I should've known. You're everything I need, I should've known. I should've known.